There is a moment, somewhere between a love story and a fairy tale, where a woman falls from the sky. Not metaphorically, not in a dream. Quite literally, a tornado catches her paraglider somewhere above the 38th parallel, spins her like a coin tossed by God himself, and deposits her, still alive, still magnificent, still wearing a bright purple jumpsuit, into the one country on Earth she was never ever supposed to enter, North Korea. She hangs from a pine tree, tangled in her parachute, the mist-damp forest enormous and silent around her. And when she spots the soldier who has come to investigate the noise, tall, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, with the particular stillness of a man who has learned to keep all his warmth, deeply and stubbornly hidden, she thinks, "Ah, a defector." She smiles. She's almost never wrong about people. Well, she is catastrophically wrong about this one. He is not a defector. He is Captain Ri Jeong-hyeok, son of one of the most powerful men in the North Korean military, a former piano prodigy who buried his gift the day he lost his older brother, and a soldier who has never once in his career bent a single rule, until right now, standing in a minefield with a live mine under his boot, watching this audacious woman from the wrong side of the world's most fortified border try to negotiate her freedom using the walkie-talkie she has just stolen from him. What follows is 16 episodes of the most improbable, devastating, tender love story Korean television has ever had the nerve to tell. This is crash landing on you. Stay a while. It is worth every single minute. It starts in Seoul, South Korea, one of the brightest cities on Earth, blazing with light and commerce and the particular restless hunger of a place that has decided to become extraordinary. This is a city of fast internet, faster delivery, and fortunes built in a single generation. It never truly sleeps. We now meet Yoon Siri, beautiful in the way that very rich, very driven women sometimes are, polished on every surface, slightly terrifying underneath. She runs her own lifestyle brand, Seri's Choice, having built it entirely from scratch after walking away from her family's conglomerate, Queen's Corp, a decade ago. She tests her own products personally. She gives press conferences in designer suits without notes. She once dated a famous actor and barely noticed when the tabloids found out, because by then she had already moved on. She named her company Seri's Choice for a reason. In the old Korean tradition of a child's first birthday, a spread of objects is laid out, and whichever one the baby reaches for is said to predict their future. Most children grab at thread, or rice, or a pen. At her first birthday party, Seri had grabbed her father's hand. She has been making choices ever since. Good ones, strategic ones. Ones that have taken her from the edge of her family's contempt to the head of her own empire. Her family's the kind that gives wealthy families a bad name. Her father, Chairman Yoon, is freshly released from prison on probation after serving time for financial crimes, and he has wasted no time calling the family back to order. He summons them all to dinner and announces, to the stunned silence of the assembled relatives, that he wants Seri to take over Queen's Corp. Her two brothers, Sejun, a hothead with a history of punching union leaders, and Si-hyung, who recently lost over 100 billion won to a con man and has been scrambling to hide it ever since, circle their father's throne like sharks who have learned to wear blazers and use cutlery. Their wives are somehow worse. Hye-ji, Sejun's wife, visits a prayer group and asks them to pray for the person currently stealing her husband's inheritance, and then, when Seri later goes missing, celebrates before she's even finished the prayer, as though God himself answered her in real time. Sang-ah, Se-hyung's wife, takes notes in a small, meticulous notebook and has the particular smile of someone who is always about 3 steps ahead of the room. Seri accepts her father's offer with grace and poise as she walks out of the dinner and then allows herself in the privacy of her own face and to look absolutely shaken, because she knows what saying yes to this means. It means a fight she's been preparing for and dreading for 10 years. But first, she has to paraglide. On the day the story really begins, Seri is testing her company's new line of extreme sports apparel in the mountains south of the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, that strange, haunted corridor of land and wire and landmines that has separated the Korean peninsula into two entirely different worlds since 1953. The product is a paragliding suit. The weather looks fine. A film crew is in position. Secretary Hong, her loyal and perpetually anxious assistant, watches from the ground with the expression of a man who already knows this is a bad idea. A tornado arrives without much warning. She laughs at first because she sees a tractor flying through the sky. Then she stops laughing. Now, on the other side of the world's most fortified border, meet the soldier. Captain R. Furious Jeong-hyeok is the kind of man who's described in old stories as carved from stone, except that stones do not secretly read shelf after shelf of music theory books, or hand roast their own coffee beans at 5 a.m. using a setup of copper canisters and careful attention, or quietly notice everything about everyone in a room while appearing to notice nothing at all. He has been stationed at the DMZ for 2 months, commanding a small, close-knit squad of 4, good men doing a quiet, unglamorous job at the edge of the world. Time equals 1.5 seconds greater than his friendly North Korean squad includes Chi-soo, the most aggressively skeptical soldier in the North Korean army, a man who treats every new piece of information with the suspicion it probably deserves, and a few degrees more besides. He will later spend his South Korean vacation working unsolicited delivery shifts at a fried chicken restaurant, eating approximately 40% of the product, and genuinely not understanding why this is a problem. Jeong-hyeok, a romantic soul who has watched so many forbidden South Korean dramas that he has become something of an authority on a country he has never actually visited. His greatest dream, held quietly and fervently for years, is to one day meet actress Choi Ji-woo in person. Kwang Bum, who is so extraordinarily handsome that South Korean talent scouts will later pursue him across Seoul like he is the last beautiful man on earth. And Yoon Dong, 17 years old, baby-faced, more than a little homesick, sitting alone on the night everything changes, reading and rereading a letter from his mother. There is also, lurking in the shadows of this story, a man named Manbok. He is not a soldier exactly. He is a wiretapper, a small, gentle, deeply frightened man who has spent his entire professional life with headphones on and other people's secrets in his ears. He carries a guilt that he has never found a way to set down. He will matter more than anyone, including Manbok himself, expects. The villain, and there is always a villain in a fairy tale, is Officer Jo Chul-kang. He has the eyes of someone who decided long ago that the world owed him something enormous, and has spent decades collecting the debt in the worst ways available. He deals in stolen cultural artifacts, in bribes paid up the chain and down, in murders arranged to look like traffic accidents on mountain roads. He is, specifically, the reason Jeong-hyeok's older brother, Moo-hyuk, is dead. This is the fact at the centre of everything, the wound that has never closed, the absence that shaped Jeong-hyeok into everything he is now. And then there is Gyu Seong-jun, a South Korean conman currently living in North Korea, having recently swindled Seri's brother Seo-hyung out of a fortune that Seo-hyung is too embarrassed to fully disclose. Seong-jun is charming in the way that men are charming when they have decided that charm is more reliable than honesty, and he has the particular loneliness of someone who has been performing for so long he has almost forgotten what is underneath the performance. Time equals 0.8 seconds greater than he is about to become, against every prediction, including his own. Something approaching a good person. His love interest, the one he does not yet know is his love interest, is SEO Dan. She is Jeong-hyeok's arranged fiancée, a cellist of considerable talent, exquisitely dressed in every scene, and nursing an unrequited love she has carried for 7 years with all the stoic dignity of a woman who absolutely refuses to admit that it is unrequited. She asked for Jeong-hyeok as her arranged husband. She travelled to Switzerland to see him. When he looked at her for the first time after years apart, he introduced himself as though they were strangers meeting for the first time. She pretended that did not break something in her. she is still pretending. She will surprise you before this is over. And now, the tornado. When Seri opens her eyes, she's in a tree. This is already not a good sign. The paragliding gear is still attached to her, the parachute tangled in the branches overhead, the forest stretching in every direction, dark, dense, eerily quiet in the particular way of places that are not used to human noise. Her walkie-talkie produces only static. She is somewhere in the mountains. She is, as far as she can determine, alive. She yells for help. She yells for quite a while. Because Seri is many things, but she's not the kind of woman who waits quietly in a tree for the world to sort itself out. A soldier hears the noise. He has been out in the field since before dawn. His squad is wrapping up 2 months of DMZ duty, moving out tomorrow, and there was a tornado last night that knocked out several sections of the electric fence and scattered equipment across a wide area. He has a lot to account for. A woman yelling from a tree was not on the list. Jeong-hyeok looks up at the woman dangling from a pine tree in a bright purple jumpsuit and has, for perhaps the first time in his professional life, absolutely no protocol to consult. He orders her down. She complains that it is too high. He cocks his weapon with the expression of a man who does not make idle gestures. She hops right down and lands directly on top of him, clinging to him instantly with both arms and both legs like a barnacle that has been waiting its whole life for exactly this ship. Jeong-hyeok throws his hands into the air rather than touch her, a gesture of such frantic gentlemanliness that it is both ridiculous and oddly moving. In the history of first meetings, this one ranks somewhere between accidentally sat on the wrong person's lap and God was definitely in a comedic mood today. Seri recovers her composure in approximately 4 seconds. She takes in his uniform, his face, his bearing, and arrives at the only conclusion that makes sense to her. He is a South Korean soldier who has crossed the border. She is ready to be helpful. She solemnly assures him she will not report his defection. Jeong-hyeok informs her, with the particular flatness of a man who has run out of patience for this specific conversation before it has even properly started, that he did not defect south. She came north, time equals 0.8 seconds. She is, at this precise moment, standing on North Korean soil. Seri says the word out loud, North Korea, in English, reflexively, as though the English somehow makes it smaller and less real. It does not. She explains about the tornado. He listens with the expression of a man who is evaluating whether this is the most outlandish lie he has ever heard, or simply the truth, which is almost worse. He accepts it as the only available explanation and tells her she will need to present it to his superior at her official investigation. Seri has seen enough movies to know exactly how that ends for the visiting South Korean woman, and she bolts. Bad news is she runs straight into a minefield. Even worse news, she does not know it is a minefield. She sees only a meadow, open, space, potential freedom. Jeong-hyeok follows her and announces with professional confidence that he knows the location of every mine in this field. She's about to tell him to prove it. Then, snick, he steps on one. The look on his face is extraordinary. A man who has never been embarrassed a single day in his entire adult life suddenly discovering, in the most inconvenient possible circumstances, what embarrassment feels like. He stands very still. He does not move his foot. He meets Seri's eyes across the meadow. Seri, delighted, understands the geometry of the moment perfectly. She has the upper hand. She walks calmly to the stream where his walkie-talkie has fallen, retrieves it, and explains to him that she will leave it in the water and the current will carry it to him, eventually. After she's far enough away that catching her is no longer a realistic option. As an exit strategy, this is genuinely brilliant. As a long-term plan, it is not, because she immediately gets lost and spends the entire night walking in circles through the same stretch of forest. Before she goes, though, Jeong-hyeok calls after her, gives her the safe path through the minefield, tells her which direction to go at the neutral zone, tells her to veer right when she reaches a certain landmark. He does not have to do this. It is not his responsibility. She is, technically, an intruder. He does it anyway. This is the first small gesture. There will be many more. She runs. Time equals 0.8 seconds. She gets lost. She marks her trail with vines tied to branches because she has paid attention to exactly one survival documentary, and this is the one thing she retained from it. For hours she walks, always coming back to the same places, the same trees, the same dark. Eventually, near dawn, she stumbles out of the forest and into what she's absolutely certain is a South Korean village. She can see the houses, the roads, the lights coming on. Only then the loudspeakers mounted on poles around the square crackle to life and begin broadcasting cheerful, insistent music. The villagers emerge from their homes in an organised flow and take up positions in the main square, beginning a synchronised morning exercise routine with the practised ease of people who have done this every day for years. Signs glow on the buildings, "Paradise of the People." The great leader is always with us. Children line up at the schoolhouse door and march inside in a neat, orderly column. Seri watches all of this. She's very still. She's still in North Korea. She has been in North Korea the entire time. A military vehicle rounds the corner, its headlights cutting through the early morning mist, heading directly toward her where she stands frozen in the middle of the road. And then someone grabs her arm and pulls her out of its path in one swift movement, and she looks up to find Jeong-hyeok standing over her, still in his uniform, still unreadable, wearing the expression of a man who has had an extraordinarily long night and has now found the one thing that could make it longer. He has, by this point already, sent his squad to look for her. He's already been told by Chisu that the South Korean woman they were looking for must have died in the Mount Suseok accident, a convenient misidentification that had briefly relieved everyone. And then she walked right into his village. Of course she did. There is an old question about trust. Is it a choice you make, or something that happens to you against your will? Seri, being Seri, has always believed it is entirely a choice. She has chosen her way to the top of a company from nothing, chosen her path away from a family that never quite wanted her, chosen every single piece of the life she has constructed with such care. She is the founder of Seri's Choice. Choices are not just her brand, they are her entire identity. But standing in the dark of a North Korean village at dawn, soaking wet, mildly concussed by the evening's events, with a very large, very unreadable soldier deciding what to do with her, Seri makes a tactical choice. She will play the damsel in distress. She plays it with extraordinary commitment and absolutely no subtlety. She flutters. She sighs. She makes herself seem smaller than she is. Jeong-hyeok watches all of this with the particular expression of a man who's been briefed on psychological manipulation techniques and is watching someone attempt one in real time. He does not appear moved. He does, however, take her inside and make her ramyun from scratch, hand-kneading the dough, adding just the right amount of everything, producing a bowl of something genuinely excellent from what looked like very limited ingredients. Seri stares at the ramyun. She is immediately certain he has put something in it. So she tries a gambit. She tells him, very earnestly, that in South Korea, the custom is for the guest to offer the host the first bite as a sign of the good faith. Jeong-hyeok looks at her with the quiet, devastating contempt of a man who has read many books and is not, in any measurable way, an idiot. He does not take the bite. She eats the ramyun. It is, she admits to absolutely no one, one of the better bowls of ramyun she has ever had in her life. An arrangement is made. Seri will stay for 3 days, until a contact of Jeong-hyeok's uncle can arrange a boat-to-boat run, 2 vessels meeting in international waters, a common smuggling operation used to transfer people and goods between countries. She will not leave the house under any circumstances. She will not attempt to spread South Korean ideas or beliefs to any member of the squad. And once she is home, she will forget everything that happened here. She agrees to every condition. She agrees with great sincerity and apparent conviction. And then, approximately 40 minutes after Jeong-hyeok leaves for his office, she calls him on the emergency phone he gave her, to be used only in situations of genuine danger, and asks whether there is body wash available. And shampoo. And perhaps a scented candle, because the unscented kind does nothing for the atmosphere. There is not a scented candle. There is, however, a candle. Jeong-hyeok stops at the village market on his way home and brings it back without complaint. Seri accepts it and immediately complains that it is unscented. This is the beginning of something neither of them has language for yet. While Seri settles into her impossible situation, the world back in Seoul is reacting to her disappearance in ways that tell you everything you need to know about everyone in it. Her brothers, learning she is missing, rush not to the search site but to a meeting about how to keep the news out of the press before the stock price drops. Hye-ji, Sejun's wife, is in the middle of prayer group, specifically requesting prayers for the person currently stealing her husband's inheritance, when she gets the call about Seri's disappearance. She takes a moment to appreciate the speed of divine response, before anyone can see her face. Sanga is already doing mental calculations. Secretary Hong stands at the search site in the mountains and screams at the police to look harder, tears running openly down his face. Chairman Yoon sits in a car nearby and watches Secretary Hong cry for his daughter, and he does not say a word. And somewhere in China, the con man Gu Seung-jun is having a quiet conversation about the one country on earth where nobody with money and resources can follow him. He nods thoughtfully. He signs some paperwork. The village of Jeong-hyeok's posting has its own small, vivid world. The wives, led by Youngie, the senior colonel's wife, a woman of formidable social standing and equally formidable curiosity, have already prepared Jeong-hyeok's house for his return. With the thoroughness of people who genuinely care, they have stocked the kimchi cellar. They have packed the salt crock with good meat. They have laundered the bedding and left fresh vegetables and made sure the water pump is working. They do this every time. They have opinions about his romantic life and express them freely among themselves, because the absence of a wife for their favourite captain is, to them, a civic problem. That first evening, the friendly North Korean squad gathers at Jeong-hyeok's house under the pretense of repairing the water pump. The coal briquette glows. The ramyun steams. Seri, for perhaps the first time in years, eats without performing, laughs without calculating its effect on the room. She's trying to charm them and they're trying to resist being charmed, and neither side is succeeding, and everyone knows it. The squad keep passing her the best cuts of meat without discussing it or acknowledging they are doing it. That night, the electricity cuts off. This happens every night at a scheduled hour, a fact of village life as ordinary as the morning exercises. Seri does not know this. She is alone in the house, the darkness sudden and absolute, and she hears a noise outside the gate. She grabs a vase. Her heart is hammering. She holds the vase like a woman who means business. The gate opens. It is Jeong-hyeok. He is holding a candle, one arm raised against the dark. She bursts into tears. He is utterly, genuinely baffled. He explains that the candle is unscented. He knows that. He is sorry about it. She wails that she knows that perfectly well. She is just upset. She is sorry for being a bother. He puts the candle out, gently, deliberately, so that the room is dark again and she cannot see him watching her cry. More precisely, so she cannot see that he is choosing to let her. He tells her it is all right. He cannot see her, now anyway. He is going to Pyongyang in the morning to investigate what he suspects is a pattern of deliberate murders. He may not return before she leaves. His men will help her. She asks his name, just his name, nothing else, so she can find a way to repay the kindness one day. He says there is no need for that. She lights the candle again. She looks inside the bag he left on the table for her. Body wash, imported shampoo, a full set of skincare products, even pretty lingerie. He went to the village market's black market cellar and bought everything in stock that came from her brand. This is where the story really starts. Not the tornado. This moment, in a candlelit room in North Korea, with a bag of skincare products and a man who says, "There is no need." In Pyongyang the next morning, Jeong-hyeok steps off the train and is arrested within minutes. The director of the trial bureau has him placed in a chair that is used for executions and tells him he is being investigated for engineering the deaths of the grave robbers he reported, the very men who were, in truth, pushed off a cliff by Chul-kang's truck. Jeong-hyeok asks to see the evidence. The director says they do not need evidence, they can manufacture it. Jeong-hyeok replies, without raising his voice at all, that the director will be personally held to account for having said that out loud. The general walks in, kicks the director, sends Jeong-hyeok to a much better room. And then the phone calls begin, urgent, whispered, travelling up the chain, as the trial bureau director discovers, too late, exactly whose son he has just threatened to frame. Not just a captain. The only surviving son of the director of the General Political Bureau, the man who controls the entire North Korean military apparatus. Chul-kang receives his own call. He goes very still. He has, without realising it, been pushing against a wall that turns out to be the most load-bearing wall in the building. Back at the village, Siri and the friendly North Korean squad navigate 3 days of domestic absurdity with increasing warmth. She figures out almost immediately that they are not guarding her so much as collectively babysitting her, and that every member of the squad is carrying some level of private terror about being found out. She does not exploit this as aggressively as she could, which is perhaps the most telling thing about her. She finds, on Jeong-hyeok's shelves, music books, thick ones, heavily annotated in a precise handwriting, covering theory and composition and the history of Western classical forms. And tucked between two of them, a glossy brochure from a conservatory in Switzerland, a photograph on the cover of a younger Jeong-hyeok at a piano, his expression one she has, never seen on him in person, unguarded, alive, completely present. He looks familiar. She cannot say why, yet. When Chul-kang arrives for a night inspection, suspicious, searching, moving through the village with the unhurried confidence of someone who believes he will find what he's looking for, Seri hides in the kimchi cellar as instructed. She holds perfectly still in the dark among the earthenware jars. The cellar door opens anyway. Chul-kang looks down at her with the expression of a man who has just confirmed a suspicion. He leads her outside at gunpoint, and the whole village gathers in the street to watch. And then headlights cut through the dark. A car with a license plate number that causes even Chul-kang to pause. Jeong-hyeok steps out, not rushing, not alarmed, moving with the particular unhurried calm of a man who has already decided how this ends. He walks up to Chul-kang, looks at the gun pointed at Seri, and introduces her as his fiancée. He very politely asks for the gun to be put away. The village holds its breath. Chul-kang lowers the weapon. For now. The word hangs in the night air, like smoke from a coal fire. Fiancé. His fiancée. The mysterious woman from Division 11, the ultra-classified unit of intelligence agents who live embedded in South Korea, whose identities are so protected that no one can verify or contradict anything claimed about them. It is a perfect story. Jeong-hyeok builds it in real time, adding layers with the calm efficiency of a man who thinks well under extraordinary pressure. Seri, who has never acted a day in her life but is constitutionally incapable of failing at anything she attempts, slumps against him with exactly the right weight and exactly the right expression of exhausted, relieved fragility. They are convincing. They are in fact perhaps a shade too convincing, given that neither of them seems entirely sure where the performance ends. When the crowd eventually disperses and Chulkang's vehicle disappears into the dark, Seri tells Jeong-hyeok that his timing was remarkable and his improvisation under pressure was impressive. He apologizes, very simply, for having put her through that. She's quiet for a moment. She's not accustomed to apologies, from men who do not actually owe her one. The village wives arrive at the gate within the hour carrying food. They claim the food is for Jeong-hyeok's return from Pyongyang. This is technically true. What they are actually there for is Seri, and every woman on that lane knows it, and Seri knows it too. She takes the food from them with perfect grace, thanks them warmly, and manages the gate in such a way that none of them ever quite make it inside the house. They leave, slightly confused about how that happened. Inside, over tea, Seri gives Jeong-hyeok careful instructions for managing the narrative after she leaves. He should tell people that she ended their relationship, not him. Women are more sympathetic when they do the leaving. He should tell them their personalities were too different. He should wait at least 6 months before being seen with anyone else to make the story hold. She delivers all of this with the authority of a woman who has navigated public perception for years and knows exactly how these things work. Jeong-hyeok listens. He does not take notes. He also does not argue. That night, through the wall between their rooms, Seri asks if he has ever been to Switzerland. The question comes gently, almost casually, but there is something careful in the way she asks it, as though she already suspects the answer matters. He does not answer. In the dark of his room, he looks down at his hands. The days that follow have the soft, impossible quality of a dream one is half aware of, which makes the waking harder. Seri accompanies Yoongi to the village market and discovers, in a stall selling goods smuggled from across the border, her own company's skincare line. Sitting here on a market table in North Korea, sold by a woman who knows nothing about how to describe it. Seri is so delighted that she gives the vendor a complete, enthusiastic product presentation on the spot. The ingredients, the application technique, the recommended routine. In North Korea. Because the opportunity presented itself, and she simply could not help it. She is incorrigible and magnificent in equal measure. She attends the senior colonel's wife's birthday party, not out of social obligation, but as a calculated move to get Yoongi on her side, which means getting her husband to put in a good word for Jeong-hyeok's promotion, which might accelerate the process of getting Seri home. While she is there, she notices that Manbuk's wife Myung-suk has brought a handmade dress as a gift, and the other women are being quietly, cruelly dismissive of it. Seri picks up the dress, examines it with the eye of someone who has been in the fashion industry for years, and declares it the most current global trend, specific, authoritative, convincing. The room shifts. Myung-suk stands a little taller. Yoongi calls Seri Unni by the end of the party. She also, walking home through the village, overhears a group of children taunting Woo-pil, Manbok's young son, calling him the son of the rat. She sends the other children home with the efficient authority of someone who has been dealing with bullies since she was one of their targets, then crouches down to Woo-pil's level and tells him, plainly and without softening it, it is better to be lonely than to be hurt. And if they hit you first, you hit back. She adds that this is what she did, and it made them leave her alone. Woo-pil asks very earnestly if she is his big sister now. She does not say yes or no, but she does not leave until she is sure he is all right. Jeong-hyeok, in parallel, is closing in on the truth he has been working toward for years. He visits the engineer repair unit under the pretense of a routine check, and while Kwang Boom manages the officer at the gate with a smile that could stop traffic, Jeong-hyeok moves quickly through the facility. He finds blueprints. He finds parts being manufactured that match the distinctive ceramic composite armour plating on the front of the Kamma's trucks involved in multiple fatal accidents over the years. He pockets a small fragment of the material and leaves before anyone thinks to stop him. Chul-kang, meanwhile, has confirmed that Seri is not from Division 11. He has man-box wiretapping equipment pointed at Jeong-hyeok's house around the clock. He has promises of promotion, and his son's college prospects held over Man-bok's head with the casual expertise of a man who has been using other people's vulnerabilities as leverage for decades. Man-bok listens. He transcribes. He makes his reports. And late at night, sitting alone in his bunker, he catches himself smiling at the warmth and laughter coming through the feed from Jeong-hyeok's house, and does not understand why it makes him want to weep. The night before Seri's departure, she organises an awards ceremony for the squad. She has put thought into this. Real thought. She calls Yoon first and gives him the Kindness Award for being the first person to acknowledge her presence in this strange, difficult situation without suspicion or hostility. His prize is a choice between 100 million won to be delivered after Korean reunification, or some corn right now. He takes the corn immediately, practically before she has finished the sentence. Jeong-hyeok watches his own corn disappearing with the expression of a man who is waiting for the moment to object and keeps missing it. She gives Jeong-hyeok a formal certificate recognising his lifelong devotion to South Korean drama, and his prize is either a celebrity lunch with Choi Ji-woo after reunification, or Jeong-hyeok's television immediately. Jeong-hyeok chooses the future. Celebrity lunch with the unshakable conviction of a man whose faith in the eventual reunion of the two Koreas is powered entirely by his love for a specific actress. He does not hesitate for even 1 second. She gives Kwang-bum the award for handsomest person in the room. This is the moment Jeong-hyeok, who has been sitting with the carefully neutral expression of a man who is absolutely not expecting his own award, begins to visibly sulk. Not dramatically. Just a slight tightening of the jaw. A barely perceptible shifting of posture. The kind of sulking that is technically dignified, but unmistakable from 2 feet away. Jisoo receives the leftover beauty products, the ones Seri has already used what she needs of. He accepts them with the dignity of a man who is above, caring about such things, and also immediately wants to smell all of them. Jeong-hyeok has, by now, given up on the neutral expression and simply storms out of the room. Seri follows him to the yard and presents his gift, a small tomato plant in a ceramic pot, which she obtained by trading some of his potatoes to a door-to-door vendor. He says he does not like tomatoes. He is not interested in caring for a plant. She tells him to treat it like a pet, to talk to it, to say kind things to it and raise it with love, and it will thrive. He says nothing. The expression on his face suggests several things at once. He takes the plant inside. She leaves before dawn the next morning, Kwang-bum driving her through the dark toward the dock. The boat is waiting. International waters are within reach. She is, at last, almost home. Then the trucks appear. 2 of them, enormous and armoured, one materialising ahead on the road and one closing in from behind, moving with the purposeful speed of vehicles that have done this before. Kwang-bum swerves. He brakes. The truck ahead skids to a stop and begins to turn. And then a motorcyclist appears on the access road alongside them, moving fast, gun already drawn, firing at the tyres of the truck ahead with the calm precision of someone who is very good at this and has planned for it. He brakes hard. The truck hits the motorcycle. The motorcycle catches fire and then explodes in a column of orange light. Seri gets out of the car. She runs toward the burning wreckage. The motorcyclist is already moving, already pulling his sidearm, advancing on the driver who has stepped out of the first truck with a weapon raised. She gets close enough to see his face without the helmet. Jeong-hyeok. Of course, it is Jeong-hyeok. He told her goodbye in the village. He meant it when he said it. And then he got on a motorcycle and came anyway, because saying goodbye is something you say, and following someone into danger is something you do, and he has always been much better at doing than saying. The truck driver raises his gun. Jeong-hyeok grabs Siri and spins, putting his own back between her and the barrel. The shot takes him in the shoulder. He stays on his feet. He returns fire. He stays on his feet long enough to pull the trigger once more. Then he collapses into her arms. There are things that cannot be unsaid. There are things that cannot be undone. A man stepping in front of a bullet is one of them. And so Siri drives. She has never driven in North Korea. She has never driven in a military vehicle at all. She has 2 wounded soldiers in the back seat, a map she cannot fully read, and the particular absolute clarity of mind that sometimes arrives when things get bad enough that there is simply no room left for uncertainty. When a roadblock appears ahead, signs, barriers, a guard stepping out to wave them down, she announces in a voice that is completely steady that her favourite film is Mad Max, Fury Road. Kwangbum does not have time to react. She floors it through the barrier. The signs scatter. They keep moving. Nobody ever reacts in time to stop her. This is, by now, a pattern. At the Sariwon hospital, Jeong-hyeok is rushed in. The nurse meets Sari in the corridor and tells her they need blood immediately, a specific type, and they are out. Sari asks what type. The nurse tells her. Sari is already rolling up her sleeve before the sentence is finished. Kwangbum tells her that if she stays to donate blood, she will miss her departure window. The track team's plane is scheduled. Time equals 0.8 seconds / greater than the coach is waiting. This is the last viable extraction route for weeks. She knows all of this. She sits in the donation chair anyway, and asks them to hurry. The plane leaves without her. Siri sits in the hospital corridor, a bandage on her arm, and nearly faints from crying. Later, a nurse brings out Jeong-hyeok's belongings, his phone, cracked and dark, his uniform stiff with dried blood. And at the bottom of the bag, one more thing. Her passport photograph. The extra one, the one she asked him about when he said they had no reason to remember each other. He'd gone back to the photographer and purchased a second print after she walked away. She cries again. This time the tears are a different shape entirely. When Jeong-hyeok wakes from surgery and finds her sitting by his bed, he is angry. Not the clean anger of someone who's been wronged, but the frightened anger of someone watching another person sacrifice themselves on their behalf, the kind that comes out sideways and wrong, that says things it does not mean. He asks why she missed her flight. He says they put everything at risk to get her home. He asks how much more disruption she intends to cause. Siri tells him very calmly that his anesthesia has probably not worn off yet, and that she will leave him to rest. She does not defend herself. She does not argue. She walks out of the room. The nurse goes in to update him on his condition. She also mentions, as nurses sometimes do, that his girlfriend gave blood and was crying the whole time and almost fainted from it. She says this as a piece of neutral medical information. Jeong-hyeok goes completely still. He gets out of bed. He should not be doing this. He walks out of the room and down the corridor and out of the hospital, and he finds Sari standing in the rain with her face tilted up to the sky, saying quietly to no one that she wishes she could just get in a car and drive somewhere far away from all of it. When she turns and sees him standing there in his hospital gown in the rain, she tells him he's out of his mind for being up. He apologizes. He says none of what he said in that room was true, and he means all of it. She says his being alive is more important than any of the words. She is crying again. She says, for once, she needed to be the one who protected him too. He looks at her for a long time with the particular intensity he brings to things he has not yet found the right words for. And then he leans forward and kisses her. He pulls back. He looks at her again. He kisses her. Once more. It begins to snow. Two other storylines are setting themselves in motion, this same night, in this same city. Seo-dan arrives in Pyongyang. She's Jeong-hyeok's real fiancée, arranged by their families formalized years ago, waiting with the patience of someone who has decided that patience is the form love must take when the object of it is far away. She comes because her uncle Colonel Go lent his high-ranking car to Jeong-hyeok, and she wants it back. She says this is the only reason. Her face suggests otherwise. In the hotel, she finds Jeong-hyeok leaving Siri's room. She registers this with the composure of someone who's been practicing composure her whole life. She tells Jeong-hyeok she came for the car. She does not look at Siri. In the car on the way back to her family's home, she tells Jeong-hyeok that they have spent meaningful time together exactly 7 times in 7 years of engagement. She wants to feel something real before she gets married. He drives and says nothing. And Gu Sung-joon, the con man, is installed in his North Korean villa with a full staff and a golf course and a private casino. Arrangement. He passes Jeong-hyeok and Seri walking in the street and stares at her, convinced for a moment that she is someone he knows. He dismisses the thought. No one from South Korea could possibly be here. He is wrong, of course, but that particular wrongness will take a little longer to catch up with him. At the hospital, Jeong-hyeok sits down with Dan and says the thing that has been building since the night he kissed Seri in the rain. He has feelings for someone else, and he cannot in good conscience go through with a marriage while that is true. Dan's response is controlled and precise. She says Seri is leaving soon. She says what Jeong-hyeok is experiencing is the particular intensity of temporary proximity, not love. She says the wedding is proceeding. She walks out. She calls the seamstress. In his room alone, Jeong-hyeok looks at the hospital ceiling for a long time. He does not say anything, but the expression on his face says everything. 2 more weeks. That is how long the Sea Control Order will last, a military-wide restriction on boat movement that closes every maritime escape route available to them. Siri is still in North Korea, and the plan needs to change. Jeong-hyeok constructs a new one with the methodical patience of a man who is very good under pressure and has also, though he will not say so out loud, stopped being entirely sorry that she is still here. Siri will be registered as a reserve member of the North Korean international track team. She will travel with them to a competition in Europe. She will disappear in transit somewhere between Pyongyang and the destination city, and she will find her own way home from there. It is plausible. It is, in the North Korean bureaucratic system, achievable. It will require a passport. A North Korean passport requires a North Korean photograph, which requires a North Korean hairstyle. Seri sits in the village salon and surveys her options. Every style available is a relic of another era, heavy, sculpted, entirely resistant to the concept of contemporary hair. She's shown 12 possibilities. She examines each one with the expression of a woman who is performing surgery. She selects the one that involves the least structural commitment and the most dramatic waves, reasoning that at least waves suggest some degree of movement. She does not love this. She absolutely does not say so. She wears it without complaint. For someone who once had a full-time stylist, this constitutes remarkable personal growth. Shopping follows. The problem is that Siri has no money. She had none when she arrived and has spent what she managed to barter for already. She goes to the village pawn shop, where she plans to pawn her watch in exchange for funds. The watch is a limited edition designer piece. She expects a significant amount. The pawnbroker evaluates it by weight. The leather strap, which constitutes most of the watch's physical mass, is very thin. He offers her enough for 2 meals and a bus fare. Time equals 0.8 seconds greater than Siri stares at the money for a moment, with the expression of a woman who has just been told the laws of physics apply to her specifically. While she's standing there, she notices another watch in the display case, the same limited edition, but a men's version. The pawnbroker tells her a man brought it in years ago and never returned for it. Seri looks at it for a long time. She thinks about the music books on Jeong-hyeok's shelves and the Swiss Conservatory brochure and the way he looked at his hands in the dark when she asked about Switzerland. She does not yet understand the connection. She will. The train to Pyongyang breaks down somewhere in the middle of the countryside, halting on an open stretch of track with no explanation and no estimated repair time. Jeong-hyeok tells her, with the equanimity of someone who has experienced this many times, that it could be up to 16 hours. Vendors appear within minutes, running up to the stranded train on foot, selling blankets and corn and hot food through the windows, a whole mobile economy built on the reliable inconvenience of the rail system. Jeong-hyeok buys blankets when Seri gives him the look. He buys corn when she mentions she is cold and possibly hungry. He draws the line at hot water for her face wash on the grounds that it is not an emergency, and she produces her own money for it, which makes him feel obscurely responsible in a way he cannot quite articulate. They sit by a small fire outside in the dark. The stars are very bright out here, away from any city. Seri burns her fingers on a potato and Jeong-hyeok sighs and takes it from her and peels it without being asked. She tells him he is a good man, that he will be a good husband and a good father one day. He says he has not thought much about the future, because he always ends up disappointed when things do not go the way he hoped. He means the piano. He means the morning he got the call about Moo-hyuk. He means every version of himself that he had to put away in order to keep going. He does not say any of this, but Seri hears something underneath what he does say, and she tells him gently, the wrong train sometimes takes you to the right station. She hopes, wherever his tracks lead, that he ends up somewhere worth arriving. The fire is small. The stars are enormous. Two people from opposite sides of the world's most heavily fortified border share a potato in the dark and talk about futures they cannot have together. In Pyongyang the next morning, Seri's passport photo is taken. She suggests tentatively that she and Jeong-hyeok take a picture together, a memento of something that cannot be properly memorialized any other way. He says there is no reason for them to remember each other. She pouts. She leaves. He purchases a second print of her photo from the photographer before he goes. The hotel brings the other characters into collision in ways that shift several trajectories at once. Seung-jun spots Seri in the lobby. He is across the room, and then he is beside her in about 6 steps, grabbing her hand, steering her toward an elevator, grinning, with the wild relief of a man who has just been handed the most valuable card in a game he was about to lose. Her brother Se-hyung had told him she was dead. Here she is, very much not dead, standing in a hotel in Pyongyang in a North Korean hairstyle. Jeong-hyeok gets to the elevator before the doors close. He places himself between Seung-jun and Seri with the unhurried efficiency of someone who has decided this is where he needs to be and is prepared to remain there indefinitely. Seri introduces him, improvising as her bodyguard. Jeong-hyeok's face performs a series of rapid internal adjustments and arrives at an expression that technically resembles neutral, but is actually doing a great deal of work. He spends the following hours demonstrating every behaviour of an attentive personal bodyguard while muttering that he is absolutely not her bodyguard. He opens doors. He positions himself between her and crowds. He evaluates threat levels at intersections. He is a spectacular bodyguard. Dan arrives at the hotel, having been tipped off. She finds Jeong-hyeok exiting Seri's room. She notes the sewn-on heart on his hospital uniform, still packed in his bag. She knows who stitched it. She does not flinch. She asks to be driven home. Jeong-hyeok checks the rearview mirror the whole way there, unable to help himself, and Dan watches him do it and says nothing. The night of the first snow. Seri and Jeong-hyeok are in a bar. Chicken and beer on the table. The window full of white. She tells him, the South Korean belief, if you are with someone during the first snow, you will fall in love with them. He looks at her with the expression of a man who is doing the emotional mathematics and finding the results. Inconvenient. He says it would be a very big mess. She asks if it is because of Dan. He asks her, genuinely, whether she has some kind of mood disorder, because he cannot from one moment to the next determine what she actually wants. She admits, quietly, that she cannot determine it either. She leans her head onto his shoulder. When he gently tries to move, she hits him, lightly, in the arm. She says her head is heavy because she has too many things in it. He allows it. Just barely. Just enough. The snow falls outside. Neither of them moves. She says that liking it is the problem. She is not talking about going home. Behind the scenes of all of this, two other developments are quietly setting up the next phase of the story. In Seoul, Secretary Hong and insurance agent Soo Chan, who sold Seri a life insurance policy with a catastrophic payout and has been motivated by sheer financial terror to find her alive ever since, have tracked down a man who intercepted a distress signal on his amateur radio equipment. They play it back. It is clearly Seri's voice. She is alive. They take the recording to the police, lightheaded with relief. Seri's brother, Se-hyung, standing right there, tells the police it is not her voice. He says they have received dozens of false reports from people claiming to have seen her. He smiles with the practiced sincerity of a man who has been lying at this level for years. Chairman Yoon listens to all of this with his face perfectly still. He drives home alone. He does not announce what he has concluded. The escape plan reaches its final form. Seri has her passport photograph, her manufactured identity, her place on the track team roster. She has a departure time and a point of contact on the European end. Jeong-hyeok has reviewed every detail and found it sound. Everything is prepared. He sends her to the airport with Kwangbum before dawn, because he has decided it is better to say goodbye in the village, where the ground is familiar and the feelings perhaps are more manageable. She tells him she will miss him, that she's upset at not being able to check on him, not even once after she's gone. He says he hopes she forgets about all of this the moment she crosses back into her real life. He holds out his hand. She shakes it. They stand in the empty pre-dawn street with their hands clasped, and say nothing else. In the wiretap bunker, Manbok listens to this farewell, with headphones on and his eyes closed. When the car pulls away, he drops his forehead to the desk and sobs. Then he picks up his phone. He calls Chul-kang. He does what he has been ordered to do. He cannot look at the handset after he sets it down. The trucks are already positioned. Chul-kang has been planning this for days, and the two Kamaz vehicles, one ahead, one behind, close in on Kwangbum's car with the practiced coordination of a trap that has been used before. Kwangbum swerves hard. He brakes. The road is narrow and the second truck is right behind them, and for a moment it seems like there is no way through. Then a motorcycle appears on the access road beside the highway, moving at speed, a figure hunched over the handlebars, already firing at the tyres of the truck ahead. He is precise. He is impossibly calm. He brakes so hard the bike goes sideways, and the truck's momentum carries it directly into the machine. The motorcycle explodes. Seri gets out of the car. She runs. The rider is already on his feet, pistol drawn, moving toward the driver who has stepped out of the burning truck with a weapon. She gets close enough to see his face. It is Jeong-hyeok. It is always, somehow, Jeong-hyeok. He said goodbye in the village and meant every word of it. And then he got on a motorcycle and came anyway, because there is a difference between what you say and what you do, and he has always been the kind of man whose actions tell the truth that his words avoid. The truck driver raises his weapon. Jeong-hyeok's hands are already moving, grabbing Seri, spinning, covering her with his own body before she has time to understand what's happening. The bullet enters his back. He fires back. He keeps standing. Time equals 0.8 seconds greater than he fires once more. Then his knees give. She catches him. There are things that cannot be unsaid. There are things that cannot be undone. A man who steps in front of a bullet for you is one of them. Seri drives to the hospital. She donates blood. She stays. The track team boards their plane without her. The coach makes a note in his roster. In a safe house in Seoul, Sung-joon and CEO John watch the departure manifest update and exchange a look. Chul-kang's plan to intercept Seri before she reached the airport has failed, but it has also succeeded in a different way. She has missed her extraction and is still, as far as anyone can tell, inside North Korea. At the hospital, Seri finds among Jeong-hyeok's belongings his broken phone, his bloodied uniform, and the passport photo he purchased, the second one, the one he claimed to have no reason to want. She holds it in both hands in the corridor and cries until she nearly passes out. When Jeong-hyeok wakes, she is at his bedside. He's angry in the way of someone who is frightened, who says things backwards, who means the opposite of what comes out. He says she was careless. He says they all risked themselves for her. She says his anesthesia has not worn off yet, and leaves the room with her composure intact. The nurse tells him what Seri did. He's out of bed in 30 seconds. He finds her in the rain. She tells him he is insane for walking around in his condition. He apologizes. He says he meant none of it. She says being alive matters more than any of the words. She says, for once, she needed to protect him too. He looks at her in that way he has, like she's something he does not have the right vocabulary for. And then he kisses her. He pulls back. He looks at her. He kisses her again. It begins to snow. The hospital becomes a centre of gravity for all the other characters in the days that follow. Dan arrives and sees the sewn-on heart on Jeong-hyeok's uniform. She knows exactly what it means and exactly who made it. She tells Jeong-hyeok that the feeling he has for Seri is proximity, not love, a hothouse emotion that will die in open air. She says the wedding is happening. She says all of this without her voice breaking once. She walks out and calls the seamstress. The seamstress picks up on the first ring. Sung-joon, on the rooftop of the hotel, runs into Dan by accident. They sit on the ledge together, two strangers with nothing in common except that they are both, in different ways, losing a game they had thought they understood the rules of. Sung-joon talks about money in a way that reveals he's not really talking about money. Dan talks about love in a way that reveals she's very carefully not talking about love. They exchange names. Dan shakes his hand when they say goodbye. Sung-joon looks at his hand afterward with an expression he cannot quite identify. Jeong-hyeok's father arrives. Director Ri does not announce himself. He does not need to. He simply walks into the hospital, and the energy of the entire building changes. Chul-kang is removed from the corridor. The investigation into Jeong-hyeok is suspended. The senior colonel receives an uncomfortable phone call. And Seri, unaware of exactly who this powerful, weathered man is taken to the Ri family home for her own protection. She argues her innocence to Director Ri with the confident fluency of a woman who is right about the facts and has no idea who she is talking to. She says Jeong-hyeok did nothing wrong. She says she is the one who put him in this position. She says she somehow began to have feelings for him, but that he does not return them. And she wants Director Ri to understand that none of this is his son's fault. Jeong-hyeok's mother, standing just outside the room, closes her eyes. It is his mother who brings Seri a real meal. It is his mother who moves her from the storage room into a proper bedroom. And when Seri finds herself in Jeong-hyeok's childhood room, his shelves, his piano, his diary with "I want to be a world-famous pianist," written in a child's careful hand, she sits at the instrument and plays the only piece she knows by heart. It is a song she heard once, years ago, on a dock in Switzerland. She does not know who wrote it. She only knows it was played at the exact moment she had decided she did not want to continue living, and that hearing it was the thing that made her stay. Jeong-hyeok is released from custody by the senior colonel, who has done a rapid calculation about whose favour he needs to be in and acted accordingly. He drives to his parents' house. He demands to see Seri. He asks his father, with a barely controlled voice, whether she is dead. His mother opens the door to his old room. Seri and Jeong-hyeok look at each other, and the relief on both of their faces is so total, so undisguised, that Director Ri, who has managed the North Korean military for decades without visible emotion, simply stares at them. That night, Seri plays the song again, and Jeong-hyeok sits beside her and tells her when he wrote it. He tells her the exact day he played it for the last time, on a dock in a Swiss city, for a little girl who asked him to, because a little girl asking felt like the right reason to play it one final time before leaving music behind. Seri goes very still. She tells him she was there. She heard the song from the bridge above the dock. She had decided, that morning, not to continue. The music changed her mind. She stayed. She went back to Seoul. She built an empire. She eventually ended up in a tornado and fell into a tree in North Korea. Jeong-hyeok looks at her as though the floor has dissolved, and something else, something more solid, has replaced it. They have been crossing paths for years, without recognizing each other. Fate, it turns out, is sometimes very quiet about what it is doing. He tells her, tomorrow, she goes home. Christmas Eve. Seung-joon has prepared clams and wine and a diamond ring, and he makes his case with more sincerity than Seri was expecting from him. He says her feelings for Jeong-hyeok are the product of an impossible situation, real enough as feelings go, but not the kind that survive normal air. He says he can get her home. He says she should marry him and leave through the front door, like a person with a passport, in business class. Outside, Jeong-hyeok fights his way through Seung-joon's perimeter guards, injured, running a fever, operating on the specific stubborn fuel of a person who has decided that something matters enough to bleed for it. When he finds Seri, she tells him she has made up her mind to stay with Seung-joon. She lists the reasons. She says it very convincingly. Her face does not agree with her voice. Jeong-hyeok looks at her for a long time. He sees the tears she's holding back. He wipes them away carefully, with the back of his hand. He turns and leaves. Seri watches the road after he is gone. The snow is coming down harder now. She thinks about him walking alone in the cold with a bullet wound and a fever. She takes Seung-joon's car keys off the table. Seung-joon opens his mouth to say something. She's already out the door. She finds Jeong-hyeok on the road. The gas runs out 15 minutes later. They find a school building, break in quietly, light a fire in the empty classroom, and sit together in the firelight until the storm passes. He disapproves of the fake marriage. She worries about what her presence has already cost him. He says Dan was never his first love, and then goes quiet when she asks who was. She says he seems like the type who has been technically single since birth, and he actually laughs at that, quiet and real, and she holds the sound of it, somewhere careful. When he falls asleep against the wall, she moves next to him and rests his head on her shoulder. She takes his hand in both of hers. He is dreaming of Moo-hyuk. He always dreams of Moo-hyuk. After Seri crosses the border, and Jeong-hyeok walks back alone through the dark, Man-bok comes to find him. He comes at night, hesitant, apologising for the hour. Jeong-hyeok tells him to say what he came to say. Man-bok tells him that he has spent his whole life with headphones on, listening to other people's words, and this is the first time in as long as he can remember that someone has asked him to speak. He takes a worn wallet from his pocket. Inside, a folded note in familiar handwriting, a birthday message from Moo-hyuk, written 10 years ago, returning a small amount of borrowed money with a note asking to share a drink when he came home from Pyongyang. Then Man-bok tells him the whole story. 10 years ago, Moo-hyuk had been gathering evidence on Chul-kang, years of murders arranged as accidents, bribes paid to judges, cultural artifacts sold to collectors abroad. He had been carrying the evidence chip to the trial bureau in Pyongyang. Chul-kang found out about it. He needed to know Moo-hyuk's route. Man-bok was the one who provided it. He had been given no real choice. Chul-kang held Man-bok's mother's imprisonment over him like a permanent blade. But that is the thing about choices that are forced on you. They still sit in your chest forever. Man-bok gets on his knees on the cold floor. He asks Jeong-hyeok to take care of his family if anything happens to him. He hands over Moo-hyuk's watch, recovered recently from the village pawnshop by Siri, who had no idea whose it was, and a recording from the night of the accident. Jeong-hyeok listens to his brother's voice. Moo-hyuk is driving, talking about Jeong-hyuk's piano gift, saying how proud he is, saying he cannot wait to hear the song. Jeong-hyuk wrote for him, "He is warm and easy and alive in a way that recordings of the dead always are, which is unbearable." And then the sound of the truck impact. And then silence. Jeong-hyeok says he is sorry, over and over, until the words lose their shape. He's saying it to a recording. The recording cannot hear him. This is the cruelest arithmetic of grief. In Seoul, Siri moves the way she always moves, fast, focused, forward. She reclaims her company's board from the board members who presumed her dead. She retrieves a ring from her sister-in-law's finger with the clean precision of a woman who counts everything. She rededicates herself to the life she built. But the apartment feels different now. The electricity works all night, reliably, and she keeps not appreciating it. The hot water comes instantly, and she keeps forgetting to notice. She has everything she's supposed to want, and she stands in her kitchen in the middle of the night and starts to say something to Jeong-hyeok, and remembers he is not there. The silence has a shape, in a way it did not have before. Chairman Yoon calls Siri's family together and presents what he has found, evidence that Se-young knew where Siri was and took active steps to prevent her return. The recording that Man-bok's surveillance equipment captured, Se-young and Sang-ah discussing Chul-kang, discussing the money paid, discussing what Sang-ah authorised him to do to make sure Siri never came home, plays in the room to complete silence. Se-hyung blames Sang-ah. Sang-ah says she did it for him. Chairman Yoon disowns Se-hyung on the spot, in front of the detective who's been standing discreetly in the hallway. Se-hyung appeals to his father to think of the company's reputation. Chairman Yoon tells him that he has spent decades cutting the parts of this family that were too corrupt to save, and he sees no reason to stop now. The detective moves in from the hallway. Sang-ah and Se-hyung are arrested. He crawled through a decommissioned gold mine tunnel for over 10 kilometers. At one point, the tunnel partially collapsed, and he spent some time under rock and debris in the dark. When he finally emerged, he was on a coastal cliff above the ocean at night, and he walked the rest of the way to Seoul on foot. He tells Seri none of this. He tells her only that he found her neighbourhood from her description, but she never gave him a specific address, so it took a while. He's standing on the snowy street outside her apartment building with dried mud on his jacket and a scattering of cuts on his face that he has not mentioned, and will not mention. Seri stares at him and says that she hates dreams like this one, because she's always sad when she wakes up. He tells her this is not a dream. She launches herself at him. He looks like he has come home. They both do. He is here because Chul-kang escaped from custody and followed Se-ri to South Korea. As long as Chul-kang is free and has access to Se-ri, both of them are in danger. Jeong-hyeok cannot return home until the threat is resolved. In the meantime, and he states this clearly, looking slightly pained by the phrasing, he is technically her bodyguard. Se-ri accepts this with a directness that suggests she had already worked that out. Seoul, through the eyes of the friendly North Korean squad, is an overwhelming and largely wonderful place. The electricity stays on all night. Every night. Without fail. This alone stops Yeon-dong in his tracks at least twice a day. The internet is fast enough that pages load before you have finished forming the intention to look at them. There are 47 varieties of ramyun in the convenience store on the corner. Delivery food arrives in under 30 minutes. The fried chicken is extraordinary. Having staked out the fried chicken restaurant near Se-ri's building as part of his surveillance assignment, accidentally gets hired to do deliveries when the owner assumes he's a waiting employee. He's too proud to explain that he is not. He delivers chicken for 4 days and eats a significant portion of each order. He considers this professionally justified. Joo-mok and Yeon-dong go to an internet cafe, where Joo-mok ostensibly researches South Korean society and customs for intelligence purposes, while actually watching 11 consecutive hours of Choi Ji-woo dramas. Yeon-dong discovers online gaming and within 40 minutes has formed a rivalry so bitter and personal that he names his character Desperate Effort and dedicates himself to destroying a player called Tomato Cultivator. Kwang-boom goes shopping and is immediately identified by 3 separate talent agencies, 2 modelling scouts and 1 casting director who follows him for 2 blocks before giving up. He is profoundly, genuinely unnerved by all of them, and does not know how to explain that he is a military operative from a country that does not officially exist in this city. Manbok does what Manbok does. He finds the quietest position within earshot of Se-ri's building and listens. Within 24 hours he knows which married employees are having affairs, which manager is embezzling parking funds, and approximately 14 other things that are not relevant to their mission. He presents this information at the squad's daily debrief at the sauna with the professional pride of a man who is very good at his job. Se-ri dresses Jeong-hyeok in a new suit, gives him a haircut, and introduces him to Secretary Hong as her temporary bodyguard Lee Hyuk. Secretary Hong looks at Jeong-hyeok. He looks at Se-ri. He has worked for Se-ri for years, and he has seen the way she moves when she's keeping a feeling very carefully managed, and he recognizes it immediately. He does not say anything. He makes a note in his internal ledger and goes back to his desk. In the elevator, Se-ri tells Jeong-hyeok she has become much more particular about people because of him. He looks at the elevator panel. He is smiling. He thinks she cannot see it from that angle. She has been watching his reflection in the elevator door the entire time. They skip work one afternoon, just the 2 of them, and go to a cinema. They hold hands in the dark, with the movable armrest between them folded up. And neither of them comments on this, because commenting on it would make it real in a way they are not quite ready for. They walk on a suspension bridge afterward. Jeong-hyeok reaches into his jacket and pulls out an old recorder, a small music player, the kind with a single headphone jack, and shows it to her. He tells her he found it in her desk, that it belongs to her. She is confused because she left it in her desk years ago and has not thought about it since. He tells her he took photographs from a bridge above a Swiss dock once, years ago. He was skipping a class. He saw a woman standing on the railing and took her picture before he understood what he was seeing. He pulls out the photograph. It is Se-ri. She's 17 or 18, standing on a bridge railing, looking at the water below. They stand on the suspension bridge in Seoul and count the times they have been in the same place at the same time without knowing it, and the number is remarkable enough that Se-ri says softly that if the last image you see before you die is your happiest moment, then she already knows which moment she would choose. this one. He does not kiss her, but he looks at her the way you look at something you are trying to memorize. Later on, Seri comes home to a dark, empty apartment. She has been bracing herself for this all day, the moment when the countdown reaches 0 and they all go back, when the door closes on this impossible parenthesis in both their lives. She sets her bag down. She sits on the couch. She makes it approximately 45 seconds before she slides to the floor and cries. The lights come on. The entire friendly North Korean squad is standing in her living room in party hats, holding wrapped gifts and a birthday cake Jeong-hyeok baked from scratch using her oven, and a recipe he found in a Korean cookbook he bought at a convenience store. The cake is crooked. It lists slightly to the left. It is, in the taxonomy of cakes, extremely sincere. Seri cries harder and runs out of the apartment, and Jeong-hyeok follows her down to the street and holds her from behind in the dark, not asking her to stop, not telling her it will be fine, just there, and whispers into her hair that next year and every year after that will be a good birthday. Because he will be thinking of her. Because he will be grateful, wherever he is, that the person he loves is still breathing and still here. That is what will make it a good day. Later that night, he gives her his gift. 2 rings, couple rings, one smaller and one larger, the kind that are meant to be worn together even when you are apart. He places hers on her finger with the visible terror of a man who has never done this before and is fully aware of the weight of the gesture. She places his on his finger and tells him that for someone who has allegedly never dated, he's remarkably good at accelerating her pulse. The squad, watching from the window, has enough grace to pretend they are not watching. Meanwhile, Chul-kang has been in Seri's building for days. Not loudly. Not obviously. He wears a stolen security uniform and walks the corridors with the unhurried familiarity of a man who works there, and nobody looks twice at him because nobody looks twice at security guards. He watches Seri's routines. He maps the parking structure. He identifies the points at which she's most isolated. He is patient in the specific way of people who have done this before and intend to do it well. What he does not know is that Manbok has broken. The breaking happened quietly, in the kitchen of Seri's apartment, late at night. Jeong-hyeok found Manbok sitting alone at the kitchen table, with a glass of water, crying without making any sound. He sat down across from him and asked, not ordered, asked what Manbok wanted to say. Manbok looked up, and for the first time in his professional life, someone in authority was asking him to speak, rather than to listen. He told Jeong-hyeok everything. He told him about Chul-kang's threat. He told him about the plan. And then he said, this time, he was going to fight. The squad builds their counter-operation with the particular efficiency of people who know exactly what they're doing and have been waiting for a reason to do it. They let Manbok send his usual report to Chul-kang, every member of the squad sitting there with their fingers crossed behind their backs, the whole conversation being deliberately performed for the recording. The squad hides in Seri's car the morning of the planned ambush. When the vans appear and the hired men swarm Seri's vehicle at the roadblock, the squad erupts from the back seat in their finest South Korean outfits, fighting with the gleeful energy of men who have been sitting still too long. Manbok, who has spent his entire career listening and documenting and keeping himself very carefully uninvolved, throws himself onto the last standing attacker and puts him down. The squad stares at him for a full 2 seconds. Manbok straightens his jacket. He seems slightly surprised at himself. They converge on the warehouse. They back up Jeong-hyeok, who has been fighting Chul-kang's hired men alone and doing well but is outnumbered. The balance shifts. But in the chaos, Chul-kang gets to Manbok, grabs him, puts a blade to his throat, backs toward the exit. Seri is in her car on the access road, watching the warehouse entrance. She sees Chul-kang come out with Manbok. She sees Jeong-hyeok follow. she sees Chul-kang raise a gun and aim it at Jeong-hyeok's chest. She puts the car in gear. The bullet that Chul-kang fires shatters Seri's window and then finds her. Jeong-hyeok turns. He sees her slumped over the wheel. He shoots Chul-kang. Man-bok, bleeding on the ground, gets to the fallen gun before anyone else does. He picks it up. His hands are shaking. He thinks about Moo-hyuk's voice on that recording, warm and alive and talking about a song he never got to hear. He fires. Chul-kang falls for the last time. Jeong-hyeok gets Seri's door open, and she comes out of it and into his arms, and he thinks all of her at once, every version of her, every moment, and he cannot move. He cannot speak. He thinks, I love you. I love you. I have not said it. I still have so much to say. Seri survives the surgery. She develops sepsis a week later from a combination of the wound and the visit to Yoon-hyuk's NIS interrogation, where she was rejected with such calculated cruelty that her body registered it as another injury. She flatlines once. The doctors get her back. Jeong-hyeok stands outside the hospital room for days. He is technically in NLIS custody. Agent Kim, who has, over the course of this investigation, developed something close to genuine investment in how this ends, lets him stay. When Seri finally wakes, her first words are for her family to leave. Then she asks for Jeong-hyeok. Then she tells the NIS agent from her hospital bed that Jeong-hyeok came to South Korea to save her life, risk everything he had for a woman who arrived in his country by a weather event, and is the best person she has ever known. She would like him returned to his home, intact. Jeong-hyeok, in his own interrogation, takes all the blame. He says he used Seri for personal revenge against Chul-kang. He says his men were here on official business, and he involved them against their will. The NIS agent looks at the surveillance footage of Jeong-hyeok in Seoul, holding doors, retrieving balloons from trees for children, helping elderly women push carts up hills, and presents it to his team as evidence of espionage activities. The room is quiet for a long time. The NIS agent tells Jeong-hyeok that Seri collapsed in the hallway after leaving his interrogation. He is out of his chair before the sentence ends. The deal is arranged at levels of government that neither Jeong-hyeok nor Seri will ever have direct knowledge of. South Korean agents held in North Korean prisons, some without trial for years, exchanged for Jeong-hyeok and his squad. The military director who worked with Chul-kang and tried to arrange Jeong-hyeok's execution has been neutralized by Director Ri in one of those quiet, devastating moves that look like ordinary governance from the outside and are annihilation from the inside. The exchange is to take place at the border. Seri's stepmother drives to the exchange location with the windows down in winter, because she has decided that there are some things she is not going to let happen on the timeline assigned to them. She calls the NIS agent's cell phone and asks him to delay the handover by any means available. The agent agrees because he has been quietly rooting for these two since approximately day 3 of his surveillance of them, and he will not pretend otherwise. He stalls. The North Koreans insist. The agents on both sides of the demarcation line advance toward each other. The squad is in handcuffs. Jeong-hyeok is quiet in the way that means everything has already been decided. And then, a car door opening behind the South Korean team, running footsteps, a voice. Seri is out of the car and she's running, screaming his name, screaming that he cannot leave like this, that he cannot just go without. She does not finish the sentence. She does not need to. He can hear everything she's not saying, and he has been hearing it for months. He tells her to stop running. She will hurt herself. She does not stop. He brakes. He crosses back into South Korea, back across the line, moving toward her, and agents on both sides of the border raise their weapons and neither of them sees anything except each other. He catches her. He holds her. He says she has been the best gift his life has ever produced. He apologizes for the cruelty at the NIS, every cold word of it. He tells her to wait. He tells her to pray. He says, someday. He promises, someday. He tells her he loves her. She tells him she loves him. The North Korean agents pull him back. He goes. At the line, he turns once and looks at her. Yoon, in handcuffs on the other side of the border, sends finger hearts across the divide. The rest of the squad waves. Manbok bows his head to the ground. Jeong-hyeok steps back into his country. In the forest on the northern side, away from the official cameras, the military director has positioned men at a crossroads with orders to quietly resolve the problem of Jeong-hyeok and his squad. The soldiers raise their weapons in the cold. Time equals 0.8 seconds / greater than the trees are still. And then footsteps, measured, deliberate. And Director Ri walks out of the tree line. He has had them followed since the moment they crossed back. He notes to the military director, in the tone of a man discussing a minor procedural irregularity, that executing soldiers without a formal trial risks harm to people who may in fact be innocent. He then observes that this calculation changes when he is standing here, watching the guns aimed at his son. He shoots the military director. He does not raise his voice. He does not accelerate his breathing. He simply walks to Jeong-hyeok and says that he is glad his son is alive. Jeong-hyeok apologizes for the worry he caused. Director Ri asks about Seri. Her name is the only question he has in the end. Jeong-hyeok cries the rest of the way home, without attempting to stop. There is a second love story woven through this one, quieter and shorter, and ending in a way that is not a happy ending but is, in its own terms, true. Seung-jun fell for Seo-dan in exactly the way that men fall for women they have decided they are not capable of loving, badly, completely, and much too late to do anything graceful about it. He spent weeks arguing with himself about it, presenting himself with evidence that he was not actually the kind of person who felt things this way, finding the evidence unconvincing, feeling things anyway. When Si-hyung's men have Dan at gunpoint in a warehouse somewhere outside the city, Seung-jun does not deliberate. He tears up his plane ticket. He goes, he enters the warehouse, and he is fast and he is reckless, and he takes down most of the men in a room before the last one catches him. He is shot in the shoulder first, and then in the stomach, and he keeps moving until he does not. He's conscious in the ambulance. Dan is crying over him, openly, without composure, the way she never cries. He asks her, in a voice that is running out of strength, whether the night she said she liked it, she meant the Ramyun, or him. He is bleeding. He asked this specific question at this specific moment. This is who Seung-jun was, all along, the man who needed to know, even at the end, that it was real. She tells him she meant him. He says he knew it. And then his hand goes limp, in hers, than Dan had spent 7 years holding on to a love that was never returned. She spent one season, one impossible, sideways, improbable season, falling for someone who chose her freely, out of nothing but the particular inexplicable mystery of two people finding each other remarkable. And then she lost him too. She grieves deeply and quietly in the way of people who have learned to feel things without showing them. She does not eat. She does not leave her apartment. Her mother sits outside the closed bedroom door and says nothing, because she has finally understood that some silences need to be held, rather than filled. What Dan eventually asks for is not comfort. It is information. Names. The chain of decisions that led to what happened to Seung-jun, starting with the man who gave the order and ending with the last person who could have stopped it and did not. Her mother agrees. Her uncle agrees. CEO John, who has been making rapid practical calculations about his personal survival and finds cooperation favourable, agrees considerably faster. CO Dan, who has been underestimated by every room she has walked into for the past 7 years, picks up the phone and begins. She visits Jeong-hyeok before she leaves the village for the last time. She tells him she was there when he was shot, in the hospital, watching, while everyone else was focused on the medical team and Seri. She tells him that Sung-joon went somewhere far away and will not be coming back. She does not elaborate. She says it with the practiced precision of someone who has decided exactly how much she can say without breaking. She tells him about the camera. She found it at his house during the night she spent there, the old one he had in Switzerland, the one that explained so much about why he had barely been able to look at her when she came to see him. She had it repaired. In the developed photographs there was a picture of a woman on a suspension bridge, looking at the water below with the expression of someone who had not yet decided to stay. It was Seri. It was always Seri. Even when Dan did not know the woman's name, even before the story had properly begun, it was Seri at the centre of everything. Dan hands him the photograph. She ends the engagement formally and with dignity. She tells him to be happy. She does not look back when she leaves. She is still learning how to do that, but she is getting better at it every day. Meanwhile, spring arrives in the North Korean village with the particular unhurried inevitability of seasons that have been occurring in this valley for longer than anyone alive can account for. The persimmon trees come back. The vegetable plots are turned and seeded. The wives gather at the corner where the sun hits first and argue about whose kimchi was best this winter. A delivery arrives. Boxes stacked in the road, addressed to the village. Inside each box, skincare products from Seri's choice, bearing a label on the front with a woman's name. Different names on each box. New products, Seri's letter explains, developed in memory of the women who made a stranger feel at home in a place where strangers are not supposed to be. They stand in the road in the spring sunshine with the boxes in their hands, and they do not try to stop the tears. They have learned somewhere in the past year that some feelings are worth keeping whole. Manbok is discharged from the military and moves his family to Pyongyang, where he has found work in sound design for a film company. He sits in the recording studio with good headphones on and listens to actors say things, and he makes notes about what the sound should feel like, and at the end of each day he goes home to Myung-suk and Woo-pil, and they eat dinner together with the lights on. He is, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, at peace with his own existence. Jeong-hyeok is discharged from the military and appointed as pianist for the National Symphony Orchestra. His first rehearsal, he sits at the instrument for several minutes before touching the keys, just sitting, breathing, measuring the weight of returning to something he had closed off so completely. Then he begins. The notes come back before the memory does. His hands know the language better than his mind does, and this is almost a comfort. He plays Moo-hyuk's song at his first solo performance, and does not announce what it is or who it was for, and it does not matter. It arrives. The friendly North Korean squad remains in the village under their new commanding officer, Captain Chi-soo, who has accepted this responsibility with the gravity it deserves and the private complaint that none of them will ever acknowledge out loud. He visits the village's black market stall on the last Tuesday of every month. He buys the same items every time, a specific shampoo from a specific South Korean lifestyle brand. He does not discuss this with the squad. The squad does not ask. This is how people who love each other handle each other's private griefs. They see them and they keep them. The text messages begin arriving 3 days after Jeong-hyeok crosses the border. They come at odd hours. There is no pattern to the timing because Jeong-hyeok set them to send at random intervals, knowing that a scheduled pattern would feel like a countdown, and she has enough of those already. He told her to eat. He told her to drink water and sleep enough and not let herself work past 10 at night. He told her that he was thinking of her when it rained, and that he hoped it was warmer in Seoul than it was where he was. He told her about a piece he played for the first time in rehearsal, not Moo-hyuk's song, something newer, something he was building from the start. He told her, in one message, that he had sent her a package. The package arrived 3 weeks later, forwarded through a chain of people that Director Ri had quietly arranged at considerable personal cost and zero acknowledgement. Inside, a small ceramic pot filled with dark soil. In the soil, seeds, small, unremarkable to look at, of a variety Seri could not identify from appearance alone. The accompanying text told her exactly how to care for them. The precise amount of water, the direction of the window, the temperature of the room. She followed every instruction with the methodical focus she brings to things that matter. She spoke to the seeds, because he had told her once that plants grow better when spoken to, and she said to them everything she would have said to him. Stock options up 30%, sold out in 6 hours, limited edition, please hurry, Jeong-hyeok, please hurry. This is love too, choosing someone in the small daily ridiculous things, in the seeds you remember to water, in the words you say to a plant because he asked you to. Secretary Hong watched all of this from a respectful distance and said nothing, because he's a man of great discretion and genuine kindness. But he brought Seri coffee every morning that she was working late, and he stopped scheduling meetings before 8, and he placed a small, additional lamp on her desk without comment. He could not fix what was missing. He could make the light a little warmer. Months passed. The messages came. Some days 2 would arrive, some weeks none. She learned not to wait for them, which is different from not wanting them. The Edelweiss seed sent up first a single thin green stem, then a leaf, then a cluster, then a delicate white flower with the soft, papery texture of something that should not survive, but does. On her birthday, the last scheduled message arrived. The app informed her that the 1-year limit on scheduled sends had been reached, and this was the final one. She read it standing at her window with the Edelweiss pot on the sill beside her, the flower in full bloom, the city, spread out below in all its relentless brightness. He had written that he wanted to meet her in the country where Edelweiss grows, and that if they both tried their very best, perhaps fate would agree to arrange it. He had written that he trusted her to show up. Switzerland. She had been going every season. Not only because of him, she had built something real, something worth building, a scholarship program for young musicians from backgrounds where talent is the only currency available, sending them to a conservatory in a Swiss city where the acoustics in the performance hall are considered among the finest in the world. The students performed publicly. The performances were documented and covered in the music press. She attended every recital and walked the city afterward and looked. She came home each time without him. She did not stop going. Her stepmother, who has spent the month since Seri's return working quietly and consistently to earn a relationship that she once forfeited on a cold beach, drove Seri to the airport each time and did not say anything except to text when she had landed. Seri told her once on the departure ramp that Jeong-hyeok had always found her before, in Switzerland and in North Korea and in Seoul and in her apartment building in the snow, and she was certain he would find her again. Stepmother nodded and said nothing, and cried for 20 minutes in the car on the way home from the airport. Now, here is Seri again. Ironically, she has been paragliding. It is the most quintessentially Seri thing she could possibly be doing, returning to the sky, returning to the exact thing that undid her and remade her, approaching it not with caution or trepidation, but with the particular cheerful stubbornness of a woman who has decided that the sky belongs to her as much as it belongs to anyone, and she will not be talked out of it by a single tornado. The harness fits the same as it always has. The mountain air is cold and clean, and tastes of altitude and pine. She runs the checklist the way she always does, each step careful and practiced, and then she launches and the ground falls away, and for a moment there is nothing but the wind and the peaks, and the absolute blue of the European sky above the 32nd parallel, which has no fences and no mines and no one watching it. The landing is imperfect. She comes down too fast on a hillside south of the city, her parachute catching in a gust and folding, sideways before she can correct for it, and she hits the slope rolling and comes to a stop under a billow of silk with dead grass in her hair, and her dignity mostly intact. She lies there for a moment, catching her breath, looking up at the fabric of the parachute translucent against the sky. And then, a voice. Familiar in a way that goes below recognition, below language, below thought, operating at the frequency of something the body knows before the mind catches up. The voice says he does not think the landing was as bad as all that. He thinks she came down on the right spot. Actually, now that he looks at it, he says, she did not fall at all. She descended. Sari pulls herself up from under the parachute. He's standing on the hillside in the autumn Swiss, sunlight, hands in his pockets, wearing civilian clothes she has never seen on him before, with an expression that is trying very hard to be casual and has not quite managed it. He looks like a man who has been travelling a long time and has arrived somewhere he decided a long time ago was where he needed to be. She stares at him. She stares for 3 full seconds, long enough to be certain, long enough to accept it. Then she launches herself at him. She cries into his shoulder that she knew he would come, that she knew it, that she kept telling everyone he would come and nobody quite believed her, that she was right. She's always right about the important things. He holds her in both arms and says that he got on the wrong train and it brought him to the right station. And then, on a Swiss hillside, in the autumn light, with a deflated parachute around their feet and the city visible in the valley below, and nothing between them and the rest of their lives, he kisses her. She descended. He caught her. They stayed. Every year, for 2 weeks, there is a small villa on a Swiss mountain where a pianist and a businesswoman live, as though the world is the simple, ordinary, manageable size it sometimes pretends to be. They have their rituals. He wakes early and makes coffee with careful attention, the copper canister and the pour-over set she found for him at a market, and she drinks it standing in the kitchen in the early light before she's entirely awake and says it is perfect every time. They argue about which windows to open. She speaks kind words to her Edelweiss, which she brings in a pot every year and which has bloomed reliably in every climate she has asked it to. He checks under the rental car before they drive anywhere because animals shelter in engines in cold weather, and she laughs at him every time, and he does it anyway. And once a small cat runs out from under a wheel arch and she does not laugh at him, for a while after that. At the annual recital of the scholarship students, held in that concert hall with the extraordinary acoustics, the one that makes even a student performance sound like something consecrated, the featured piece one year is a piano solo. The programme lists it as a composition by the evening's guest artist, written for his late brother. It is a sweet, serious melody with a long, open ending, the kind of music that sounds like it is still asking a question at the close. Sari hears it and recognises it, instantly, below thought, below language. Her hands are in her lap. She reaches under the table. He takes her hand. This is the song that played on a Swiss dock on the day she decided to stay alive. This is the song he played on the day he decided to go home and become something useful with his grief. And now they are sitting together in the same room, with the same song, and they are both still here, and that is the whole of it. This is what the story is, at its deepest level, underneath all the soldiers and borders and bullets and bureaucracy. It is about the people who choose you without a reason sufficient to explain it. The friendly North Korean squad who keep your corn warm and write you terrible, sincere, beautiful poetry, and carry your blood type in their heads and follow you to the wrong country and call it duty, while meaning something else entirely. The wiretapper who spends a lifetime listening and finally, at the cost of everything, speaks. The con man who learns to die for someone because she made him feel that a person worth dying for was a person worth living for first. The cold woman who loses twice and survives twice and picks up the phone and begins, because beginning is what you do with surviving. It is about a man who gave up the piano and found a woman who hummed the melody back to him without knowing it was his. It is about a woman who stood on a bridge at 17 and counted and kept counting and is still counting and is not done. It is about the possibility, slim, impractical, available only to those willing to be laughed at for believing in it, that some meetings are so improbable that the only honest explanation, if you are a person inclined toward honesty about such things, is that something in the universe arranged them. Or maybe just a tornado. Either way, she descended. He caught her. And the rest was fate.